This week I want to answer two questions that I've got over the last couple weeks. Number one, if I still use the functional movement screen. And number two, do I still use the Smart Group training system? So the first part of the question is, do I still use the FMS? And the short answer is, yeah, I still use it. I still use it on a regular basis. Does the FMS tell me everything that I need to know about a client? Absolutely not. It's not supposed to. It's supposed to give you that first look at a client that is a non-injured client, to let you know what path to then go down from there. And I think it is still a fantastic tool for that. And for example, with my last case study, even though he came in saying that he felt rotated and that his body didn't feel right, he felt kind of twisted or stuck, and that he and asymmetrical and just didn't feel right, he didn't have pain. So the first thing I did was an FMS, get the big patterns, get a score, go from there. And I still love the FMS for that application. I also like the application for if you have trainers on a training staff, or if you are communicating results with another person at all. So if you're just doing your own thing in your own world, you can do whatever assessment you want, doesn't matter, and like how you do it and what you get out of it really only matters to you. But if you're in a situation where you have staff members communicating with each other, you're communicating with another person, the FMS is fantastic because it gives you that criteria and it gives you that 0, 1, 2, 3 and that language to be able to better communicate and better get on the same page with another person. And since the FMS is systematized in that way, I still find it the easiest system in which to kind of get a group of people to be able to look at human movement and come to a consensus on what that human movement looked like. And historically, once I did the FMS, if someone had a lot of injuries, they would be referred out or go down the selective functional movement assessment path, which is still very much on the table. However, the difference between what I was doing earlier in my career and now is just that I use a variety of different things as breakouts for the FMS and for the SFMA. So instead of just being strict by the books, I'm willing to bring my entire scope of learning that I've gone through over the last couple decades into play after getting that cut and dry FMS score, to then do further assessment and try to tease out things that I've found in the FMS or that need to go deeper on regardless of the FMS. So it still points me in the right direction, and then further assessment is needed. Whatever assessment, and FMS has said this from the beginning of time, like whatever breakouts you want to do from there are fantastic, and that's your prerogative. And yeah, and that's exactly what I do. And it still works great for that, to get you in the ballpark to see where you need to look deeper. So even though the FMS doesn't tell me everything I need to know, I think it's still worth the 10 to 12 minutes of my time up front to get a good starting point, numerical starting point on what movement looked like with that client, regardless. The downsides of the FMS, in my opinion, are sometimes it's a little bit high level for the person, but within their curriculum there's a modified functional movement screen, and that also might be when someone goes straight to the top tier SFMA or straight to your deeper assessment system instead of going into the FMS in the first place. And as they progress, move into an FMS scoring system. The inline lunge. Not the biggest fan of this amount of time that it can take to get people set up into that. For like, I could set them up into a different lunge pattern and have it all done and have results similar in the amount of time it takes me to explain and get someone set up in that particular lunge pattern. I understand why they have the reciprocal arm and leg pattern. I understand why there's the measurement between the feet. I understand why it's in a line. I'm just not the biggest fan of it being on top of the board. I understand why it's on the board. That amount that I get out of that pattern, to have it be on the board for the amount of extra time that it takes to set up, is sometimes frustrating. I used to have a big issue with the rotary stability test, but they have made some changes to that I think have made that test a lot better. When they first changed it, I thought I liked it even less. I thought that it was a bad change, but after going through it several times, I realized that I do like the new change to the rotary stability. So now that that's more of a realistic screen and more reliable, besides the inline lunge being a little bit of a pain to get set up for some people, it's really, like I said, just a good use of 10 to 12 minutes of your time to get some good reliable data to be able to put that into someone's file and see if you're making an appreciable change and be able to share that data with others. The next question is from Johnny Fukumoto from Canada, I believe Toronto, Canada, because he was always wearing Toronto Maple Leafs stuff when I would see him at seminars back in the day. But he shot me a question: do you still use the color bands for your smart group training system, or have you made things simpler, easier in a way on that front? Do you still use a warm-up that incorporates people's specific corrective exercises that you gathered from their FMS, etc.? So number one, do I still use the color bands for the smart group training system? Which, if you don't know what that is, I will super quickly go over it. We would do an FMS screen on our large group clients, and if they had a 0 or 1 on anything in the functional movement screen, they would have a colored bracelet to wear in the group training to correspond to that 0 or 1. So that way, when we were explaining the large group training program designed to people, we would know exactly what their issues were, so we would make sure that they were on the right progression or regression for the exercise by looking at their wrist, and it made it super simple when we have a large amount of clients. In my current situation, we don't have a large amount of group training clients. We are mainly doing a lot of semi-private personal training, and then our classes are an add-on for our semi-private clients. So instead of our classes being like 20 to 30 people, they're only like 8 to 10 people. And instead of us having hundreds of group training clients, we probably only have like 20, 25. So all of the clients that we have, except maybe a couple, are semi-private training clients. So we can just easily communicate in their semi-private training sessions the modifications that they need to make in the group training. So with that model, we don't have to have bracelets on people because we pretty much have everything lined out on their workout cards and have used education over the course of their training programs to get them to where they are dialed in during their group training sessions. If, however, I was going to screen a big group of people and I had to train them and I wanted to train them well quickly, that's the first thing that I would go to in order to make sure I had an idea what was going on, especially if it was me and other staff members. So to answer question number 2, have I found a way to make it simpler or easier on that front? I get maybe that no, I just have less clients, so yeah, that makes it a whole lot simpler and easier. I have less clients and we charge more and we have a smaller overall business, so it's easier to manage because that's what I want to do right now in my training career. So yeah, it is simpler and easier, but if, like I said, if I was doing it the other way, that's still the best way that I know how to do it. And last part of that question is, do you still incorporate custom correctives into their warm-ups in a large group setting? I paraphrased that one. Yes, but similar to what I was talking about before with less people, most of the time now we just tell our people to come, when they come in, to do any of their stuff early before the class starts, or they know when it's a specific breathing exercise that they do their own variation of that breathing exercise, or they know that when a certain exercise in the warm-up comes up that they know their own variation. So they know their own kind of substitutes and modifications that they would make in the warm-up since we've worked with them over and over again. And then they make those modifications on their own throughout the warm-up, and then we make progressions with them in their semi-private training sessions. So to sum it all up, we're still doing an FMS on any of our group clients. We're still modifying the workouts in their group training based on the FMS. It's just that we're making most of those modifications and most of that education and most of those changes in the semi-private environment, and then that carries over into the class environment instead of making those changes and doing those things in the class environment. That works well with my current setup, my current gym, where we're doing the majority semi-private. That scenario does not work in my old gym, and things change, and I never know what I might be doing in the future, and I will never rule out going back to a model where I would be doing group screens and the bracelet system with a group of people. It's just that in my current situation, I'm really enjoying working with a lesser amount of people and putting in more of a focus on the detail-oriented training that I enjoy. So in summary, yes, I still use the FMS. I still do think it's the best tool to use for a large group training scenario in most cases. I still use the smart group training system. It's different than my last gym due to the fact that I'm in a smaller gym, but things change depending on the amount of clients that you have, the amount of people that you're screening, the amount of leads that you're getting in. And if I were back in that same situation, I would still be using the bracelet system just like I was before. And if I go back into another large group training situation again, my old system would once again be my new system with some minor changes and tweaks and growth. But for the most part, I still believe in the FMS. I still believe in the smart group training system. It's just evolved. That's all I got for you this week. I did want to include some footage of a case study that I've been working on in this week's episode, but I realized that needs to be its own separate episode. So I'm going to be working on editing that footage over the course of the next week and look forward to bringing you that footage next week. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching. See you next week.